That is the scene in downtown Barcelona where thousands of protesters continue to clash with police. The protests come after the authorities arrested former Catalan leader Carles Puigdemont earlier today. Now, he fled the region in October amid uproar over his regional government's declaration of independence. Arthi Pol is following the story for us. Arthi, what do we know about the protests?
Well, certainly we saw how much they have intensified. As you can see, the clashes between police and the demonstrators. Again, the thousands of demonstrators in Barcelona. So those images are the most recent that we have coming into the newsroom showing those clashes occurring. We know, for example, that police are using batons, and we know that protesters have been throwing garbage and other objects at police. That is according to Reuters reports from individuals who are in that scene right now. These demonstrations are taking place, as you mentioned, in reaction to the detainment of the former Catalan leader, Carles Puigdemont, who, of course, entered a self-imposed exile from Spain, and that was following the illegal secession referendum that was held last year in October. And we know that Madrid moved in to do direct rule. Now, there are a number of different leaders who are now facing potential decades behind bars, jail time, because of that referendum that took place. We know that German authorities detained Puigdemont, and so the process waiting for the extradition of that leader is now pending and expected to take place tomorrow.
Well, for a closer look at the situation unfolding in Spain, we have reached Andrew Dowling. He's an expert in Catalan history at Cardiff University in Wales. Former Catalonian separatist President Carles Puigdemont has been detained in Germany. Andrew, thank you for joining us. I actually want to begin by reading to you a statement we have received from one of his lawyers representing him. And he says, at the moment, Spain is no more a democracy because they've put their political opponents in jail. He goes on to say, Spain is acting like a dictatorship. How do you respond to that statement?
Well, obviously, it's very dramatic language. I mean, Spain is a parliamentary democracy. I mean, the question is, there are two definitions of the Catalan problem, if you want. The Spanish authorities say it's a legal problem, whereas obviously the Catalans say it's a political problem. Now, you can say, if you just take the legal argument, that yes, the Catalan parties, Puigdemont and others, have broken the Spanish law. But the question is, you're also then, if you just choose the legal avenue, you're ignoring the political context which has led them to break the law.
Break this down for us. Why is Spain taking such a hard line on this Catalonian issue?
OK, well, there are a number of reasons. Firstly, I think a very important reason is Spain has a minority government. It's got a minority conservative government, and then there's a new, if you want, upstart conservative party that has a very hard line on the national question, on national unity, that is breathing down its neck. And in recent polling, it showed that it had the potential to overtake the current right-wing party in Spain. So there's kind of like a lot of internal political pressure. There's also a lot of anger in parts of Spain at the attempt of the Catalans to break away. You'll often hear Spaniards, outside of Catalonia, talking about the idea of Catalan independence. It would be for them like losing their right arm. So they see Catalonia as essentially part of Spain. Then you've got an economic argument, which is that Catalonia is a very important contributor to the Spanish economy. It's a rich region. It comprises almost 1/5 of the Spanish economy. So no realistic Spanish government is going to happily, if you want, relinquish control over that very important area.
Other partners in the EU have been relatively silent on this point about this contention between Catalonian leadership and the Spanish government headed in Madrid. Why isn't the EU or other European states speaking up on this issue?
Well, essentially because the European Union is a union of nation states. It's a union of states. And, for example, the treaties state that the European Union cannot interfere in the internal developments of of each and every state. So, for example, if this was going on in France, the European Union would have no right to intervene. So it's to do with, if you want, the legislative apparatus of the European Union itself doesn't allow for intervention. Now, what you do get is, if you want, individual parliamentarians in different countries or occasionally ministers in smaller governments making comments, making observations, but no national government within the European Union is going to openly criticize the Spanish government because it is, in a sense, interfering in the internal affairs of a nation state member.
Now, Puigdemont, if he is found guilty for the charges that might come against him. He could face up to 25 years in prison. Do you honestly see it moving forward in that direction, or where do you see this going from here?
Well, I think one of the things, if you want, about the law is the law is obviously interpreted by judges. And one of the things that's happened in Spain is that the legal issues have been interpreted in a very harsh and dramatic manner, hence these 25-year charges. I think, if the whole Catalan leadership, there's a number of them, are imprisoned for, 10, 15, 20 years, it will do permanent damage to the relations between Catalonia and the rest of Spain. And any future Spanish government that wants to, if you want, attempt to solve what is a political problem can only ultimately choose, as part of the negotiations, to release those people. So I hope very much that nobody's going to be in prison for 10, 15, 25 years. But the only way ultimately to address it will be by political negotiations, not only the law. The law is, if you want, can be part of the solution, but it cannot resolve a political problem.
Andrew, while you've been speaking, we've been showing images of the protests taking place in the streets of Barcelona. Is there a potential that this thing is going to become very violent?
I don't think it's got a potential to become very violent, but I do think it has potential, if you want, to radicalise and for us to see more incidents of clashes between protesters and police. And I think we should also remember, for the first 5 years of the big mass movement for independence between 2012 and 2017, it was an incredibly peaceful movement. The first incident of violence was actually the violence carried out by the Spanish police on the 1st of October 2017. But now there's a lot of accumulated frustration. You can see people are very angry, and things, obviously, once you have thousands of people on the streets, you can obviously get incidents where ultimately perhaps somebody is killed, God forbid, and then that can only escalate the tension and make the situation potentially spiral. But I don't think we're going to see, if you want, a terrorist type grouping emerging or anything like that, but a lot of, if you want, continuing political instability, continuing frustration and anger, which we manifested in continued protests.
And these are some of the latest pictures from Barcelona. Scuffles were breaking out earlier between protesters and the police. Thousands of people had taken to the streets following the detention of former Catalan leader Carles Puigdemont. Police are still monitoring the situation, as are we.